why are these orphans rejoicing? Because gifts to the Dorms for Orphanages Fund of Heaven's Family have provided them with new homes. All right, it's good to be back together again. We're right in the middle of a miracle. In Matthew chapter 15, as Jesus is about to feed the 4,000. One chapter ago, feeding the 5,000. This chapter, feeding the 4,000. Remember, they're only counting men, so there were tens of thousands of people, women and children. And this was a miracle. This was not a case of fat boy with big lunch saves the day with his, his Mongo loaves. This time, they've got 7 loaves and a few small fish. Verse number 35 is where we left off. He directed the people to sit down on the ground. And he took the 7 loaves and the fish, and giving thanks, he broke them and started giving them to the disciples. And the disciples gave them to the people. And they all ate and were satisfied. And catch this, it's the repeat of the earlier miracle of the feeding of the 5,000. They picked up what was left over of the broken pieces, 7 large baskets full. So here's a good faith builder. Jesus provided more than they needed. How about that? That's a good thing to note. God is a God of just abundance. I mean, he is not a skimpy God, a penny-pinching God. He's a God of abundance. I think of that just about any time, like in my yard, we have several maple trees, and during the right time, certain time of year, that's when those little, twirly bird maple things come off of the leaves because there's seeds in them, and the wind blows them, and it's just a miracle, I won't get off into that, but they all float. And sometimes we wind up having hundreds of little maple trees growing in our yard as a result of those seeds falling from one tree. Hundreds. And it takes a few lawn mowings before, we wipe them out and just the grass is back there. But God just does things sometimes in superabundance. This time they pick up, it was 7 large baskets full. And keep this in mind because I'll be asking you a Bible trivia question here probably momentarily. How many baskets full did they pick up from the feeding of the 5,000? Well, it was 12 baskets full left over at that time, 7 left over this time. God did it again. And so, if nothing else, we ought to be encouraged that if God did something for you just a short time ago, don't think, well, I've used up all my miracles for now, or, boy, God would never do that again for me because, wow, think of how nice he was to do it the first time. No, God keeps on being nice, keeps on being loving, keeps on being gracious. He did it before. He'll do it again. And this is just one chapter later. And what a great miracle. Verse number 38 is the final verse of this section. Those who ate were 4,000 men, besides women and children. So do the math. If every man was married, which probably most of them were, that would be it now. We're up to 8,000. If all of them had just 2 children, that would be up to 16,000. Okay, so more than likely they had closer to 4, 5, 6 children apiece. So we're, bordering here 25 to 30,000 people that Jesus fed, and then he sent them away. Verse number 39, and sending away the crowds, Jesus got into the boat and came to the region of Magadan. Jesus had to send them away to get them to go. And I'm sure he said that, look, I'm leaving too, so there's no sense staying around. I'm about to get in my boat down there. You see it parked on the shore. And me and my disciples were heading out. So time to go home. I fed you, head off. And off they went. Boy, what sights they had seen during those 3 days in the middle of nowhere during that camp meeting. Jesus got into the boat and he came to the region of Magadan. Now, verse number 1 of chapter 16. The Pharisees and Sadducees came up, and testing Jesus, they asked him to show them a sign from heaven. Now, you can read between the lines there. We've just read verses ago that for 3 days, Jesus was healing the blind, the mute, the deaf, the lame, the crippled. I mean, talk about signs. And probably hundreds of people had been healed out in the wilderness where they streamed to get to Jesus. And not an easy hike, but they thought it was worth the hike. But who was apparently missing from the wilderness crowd? It was the religious leaders, who apparently didn't have enough interest or didn't want to appear like they were interested in hiking out to the wilderness. My goodness, they might miss a meal, or they might get their feet dusty or something like that, God forbid, hiking out there with the commoners. And so they stayed in the cities and they're waiting for Jesus. He shows up and they ask him, we want to see a sign from heaven, And if I had been Jesus, I'd have had a violent reaction at that point in time. I'd have said, you fools, where were you over the last 3 days? But Jesus, ever patient, he replied to them, when it is evening, you say, it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning, there will be a storm today, for the sky is red and threatening. Do you know how to discern the appearance of the sky, but cannot discern the signs of the time? That is, you're kind of have a little weather forecasting thing going here. There's an old saying, red at night, sailors delight. Red in the morning, sailors take warning. And that's basically what they were saying here in their weather forecasting deal. They see a red sunset, and there's going to be, there will be fair weather, for the sky is red, and in the morning there'll be a storm today, for the sky is red and threatening. So Jesus says, you can predict the weather, but you're missing the most obvious thing, right before your eyes. You can't discern the signs of the time. An evil and adulterous generation seeks after a sign, and a sign will not be given it except the sign of Jonah. And he left them and went away. And he already said that just back in chapter 12, the same exact thing. The sign of Jonah, the sign of his resurrection. Okay, been lovely being with you. Next time, the disciples misunderstand Jesus. Look forward to seeing you then. God bless you.
HeavenWord 7 is made possible by the financial support of viewers like you. Thank you.